I can tell you the moment everything changed. Not when budgets got cut. Not when new management walked in with flashy ideas and jargon. Not even when the office coffee started tasting like liquid regret. It was when Jason, the boss's son, leaned back in his leather chair, folded his arms like a king and said, "Thanks for the work, sweetheart. We own your code." That statement wasn't just wrong. It was a death wish. But I didn't react. I didn't argue. I kept my voice steady. I smiled. A quiet, almost pitying smile. The kind you give someone who's just stepped confidently into quicksand. You see, people like Jason are raised to think they're invincible. Born on third base but sure they hit a triple. He was the type who thought coding meant ordering tech people to work quicker. Who believed leadership was about volume, not skill. And me? I was a ghost. The quiet one in the hoodie who skipped office parties, arrived early, solved crises before alarms sounded, and could diagnose a system failure faster than most people open a snack. I'd been there 6 years, longer than Jason had been out of his expensive MBA program. Long enough to know every vulnerability, every buried secret in the digital sense. He didn't fire me in private. Of course not. He did it in the conference room with the blinds open so everyone could see. He wanted a show. His father, the CEO, wasn't there. He was flying back from a quarterly investor trip. If he had been, it would have gone differently. But life has timing, and this timing was perfect. Jason slid the termination papers across the shiny table, smirking like he just delivered the perfect joke. "Corporate restructuring," he announced to the room, as if the word corporate excused idiocy. I looked over the papers not because I had to, but because performance matters. My hands were steady. His trembled just a little, like someone pretending to be confident. He expected pleading. People like him always do. Instead, I straightened the pages, stood up and said only, "Good luck." Just 2 words. No explanation, no threat, no fear. His smirk wavered just a flicker, like a light bulb realizing it's about to blow. I walked out past shocked faces. Some sympathetic, some scared, some avoiding my eyes as if unemployment was contagious. As the elevator doors closed, I could have sworn I heard him whisper, "She'll come crawling back." Oh, sweet boy. If only you knew. My apartment was silent when I got home. A heavy silence. The kind you only notice after your world tilts. I made tea. Not for comfort but because routine keeps the mind focused. On my desk was the contract. The original, signed, witnessed, stamped. Not an employment contract. A technology licensing agreement. I wasn't an employee. I was a vendor. 5 years ago, when the company was struggling, they couldn't afford my rate or offer benefits. So my lawyer Carmen, a ruthless woman who could turn paperwork into a weapon, suggested a smarter path. I didn't sell them my system. I licensed it. They never owned it. They only rented the right to use it. And the renewal? Quarterly, automatic, with one rule: termination of the relationship ends access. So by firing me, Jason hadn't removed a coder. He had removed the only legal bridge to the technology running 87% of their business: inventory, shipping, payroll, vendor authentication, tax processing, everything. Without my licensing key, the system would stay intact but frozen, locked, unmovable, a vault with no combination. The next review and payment date was tomorrow 9 a.m. And since they ended the relationship, there was no renewal option. No grace period. No undo button. That night I slept deeply. Better than I had in months. Not for revenge, but because for the first time in so long I wasn't the one who was afraid. At 9:22 the next morning my phone rang. Once, then again, then 11 more times. On the 12th call, curiosity won. I answered. It wasn't Jason. It was his father, the CEO. His voice was unsteady. The sound of a man who just discovered the floor beneath him was glass. "Brenda," he said, breathing unevenly. "Please tell me you're still consulting. Tell me my son didn't just fire the owner of the only system keeping this company alive." I didn't answer right away. Silence, when timed well, is its own scalpel. Finally I spoke. "Did you read the contract?" There was rustling on the other end. A page turning. A gasp. Then a choked, "Oh God. Oh no. She's not on payroll. She rents the technology to us." His voice dropped to a whisper, the kind for funerals and confessions. "Jason didn't fire staff," he said. "He evicted our infrastructure. And just like that, the game began. The call ended suddenly. Not because I hung up, but because the CEO did, or because someone in the room grabbed the phone from him in a panic. I could almost see it. Executives circling like vultures, papers everywhere, voices clashing, someone shouting about compliance, another muttering about legal exposure. Chaos always sounds the same. For a full minute, I just sat there staring at my blank wall. I expected to feel adrenaline or satisfaction or nerves. But there was nothing. Just calm. A steady, quiet calm that exists only when the truth is finally louder than you've had to be. My laptop screen glowed to life. I opened the system dashboard, not to interfere, just to watch. Licensing status. Expired. No authorized access. Server activity. Heartbeat pings failed. User attempts. 231 unauthorized. Someone was already trying to break into the code. Someone who didn't know that forcing the lock only makes it stronger. I sipped my tea as another notification appeared. Incoming call. Jason. Of course. I let it ring. He called again and again. On the fourth try, he changed tactics. Unknown number. Clever but not clever enough. I waited 5 more seconds before answering, not for drama but because power lives in timing. Brenda, he snapped. No greeting, just panic dressed as authority. We need your login. Everything's frozen. The vendor platform rejected our orders. Logistics can't. Jason, I cut in softly. Slow down. The silence that followed was sharper than any insult. He breathed shakily. What did you do? He finally asked. The words change, but the desperation never does. I did nothing, I said. You did. That system was built here, he snapped. It belongs to the company. No, I corrected. The data, yes. The operational framework, the algorithms, the automation logic, the encrypted authentication paths, all of that is leased. Never sold. I'm not talking about contracts, he hissed. I'm talking about reason. Morality. Do you know how many customers we serve? How many suppliers rely on us? You can't just shut it off. And you don't get to fire the only person who keeps it running, I replied. Actions have consequences. Contracts protect both sides. A beat of silence. Then he said the quiet part aloud. My father's going to kill me. I didn't answer. He tried again. Just tell me what you want. I heard movement behind him. A door opening, footsteps, then another voice, low and furious. Theo, give me the phone. Jason must have hesitated because the next words were bitten off like glass. Now. The line shifted. Brenda, the CEO said, his tone formal, stripped down to pure urgency. We need to resolve this today. I agree, I said. He exhaled, relieved. Good. Then let's talk numbers. We can negotiate a buyout. Fair compensation. Immediate reinstatement. No. That word stopped him cold. No, he repeated. I told you yesterday, I said. I'm not coming back. Quiet breathing on the line. Slow, steady, holding back fury or fear. Maybe both. Then what are you asking for? I'm not asking, I said. But I will give you options. Paper rustled. Someone was taking notes. 1. You migrate to a new system. It'll take months, cost millions, and you'll lose clients. His silence answered that. 2. You purchase full rights to my platform. And the cost? That depends, I said. On what? On whether you want me to walk away quietly, or rebuild it better for someone else. His reaction was a whisper. Oh God. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, quieter now, Brenda, why didn't you tell us? I almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. I did. 6 years ago. In writing. Signed by legal, your predecessor, and your board. But why structure it like this? Because, I said softly, men like you always think you can replace women like me. A long, slow exhale. Not anger. Not denial. Recognition. Finally, he said, I'll call you back. And just before the line disconnected, I heard him turn to the room and say, Everyone sit down. We need to talk. We're not dealing with a former employee. A pause. We're dealing with the owner. The CEO didn't call back for 6 hours. 6 hours in corporate time isn't silence. It's frantic meetings, legal teams scrambling, finance running numbers they never wanted to run, and IT trying and failing, to brute force doors built not to break. I knew exactly what was happening behind those glass walls. Panic disguised as productivity. Around 3:40 p.m. my phone buzzed. Not a call, an email. Subject: urgent meeting request. No pleasantries, just dread. Attached was a calendar invite for a video call at 4 p.m. Not just with the CEO. 3 others. General Counsel, Head of Finance, and Jason. Of course Jason was included. People like him never fade quietly. I accepted. Not because I had to, but because showing up sends a message: I'm not hiding. You should be. 3:59 I clicked the link. For cameras flickered on. The CEO looked exhausted, tie loose, sleeves rolled, face pale. Legal counsel sat rigid, eyes narrowed behind thin glasses. Head of Finance looked like she hadn't eaten all day. And Jason looked like panic wearing a suit. His confidence was gone. Jaw tight, eyes avoiding mine. Brenda, the CEO began, clearing his throat. Thank you for joining. I nodded. You requested it. Finance spoke first, voice tense. We need clarity on system risk. Warehouse teams are on manual logs. Shipping delays are at 17 hours. Legal finished. And if we don't restore operations tonight, vendor penalties activate. Jason muttered. This is ridiculous. She's holding us hostage. His father turned slowly. Jason. Stop. Jason shut his mouth for once. The CEO refocused on me. We've reviewed the agreement. Legal confirms it's enforceable. No loopholes. Correct, I said. He continued, tone controlled. You mentioned 2 paths earlier. Yes. And the second was a buyout. I didn't speak. I let the silence dig. Finally, legal said. We need a number. Something realistic. Realistic. An interesting word. What they wanted wasn't realism. It was mercy. Before I name a number, I said calmly, I want to understand something. The CEO nodded slowly. Go ahead. I looked right at Jason. Not unkindly, just directly. Why did you fire me? His eyes flickered toward legal, toward his father, then down. His voice was small, defensive. I thought you were redundant. No apology. No accountability. Just justification. Did you review my contract? I asked. No, he muttered. Finance closed her eyes like she was praying for patience. Did anyone? I pressed. Silence answered. Contracts aren't just paperwork. They're confessionals. They show who pays attention and who assumes ownership without earning it. Finally, the CEO stepped in. Brenda, what will it take to restore operations? 2 things, I said. First, a number. Legal ready. And second, I continued, watching Jason, an acknowledgement. He frowned. What kind of acknowledgement? That the system doesn't run just because it exists. It runs because someone built it, maintains it, and understands it. Jason scoffed. So you want what? Gratitude. No, I said. I want recognition. The CEO's gaze sharpened, not angry but assessing. He understood. Finance set her pen down, voice softer now. What's the number, Brenda? I didn't blink. 2,400,000. Jason exploded before anyone else could react. This is insane. His father didn't look at him, just said quietly, sit down. Jason stayed standing. So, I continued. That covers a full buyout, transfer of IP, system keys, documentation, and a 10-day transition window. No ongoing role. No future involvement? Legal asked. No future involvement, I confirmed. You could feel the weight of those words. No strings. No return. No second chances. The CEO rubbed his forehead. If we agree, how fast can you restore access? As soon as the wire clears. Finance swallowed. And if we decline? Then your board spends months explaining to investors, I said, why your entire logistics infrastructure collapsed over one preventable decision. Silence settled over the call. This time no one broke it. Finally the CEO exhaled. Send the finalized agreement, he said quietly. Legal nodded. Jason just stared at me. Anger mixed with disbelief and something else. Understanding. Not respect, not yet, but recognition. And maybe that was enough. Because for the first time in his life, He was realizing power isn't loud. Power isn't inherited. Power is knowing the system well enough to take it with you when you leave. I sent the revised contract that evening. No dramatic cover letter, no threats. Just facts. Clean, precise, legally airtight, the kind of document that doesn't shout power but assumes it. Then I did something unexpected. I turned my phone off. Not to avoid them, but to let them sit in the silence. People underestimate silence. It forces reflection. It forces panic. It forces truth. By morning there were 4 missed calls, 2 voicemails, and a thread of increasingly frantic emails. The last was from the CEO. Wire in progress. Call me the moment it clears. Not if. When. There's a moment right before a company accepts that consequences are real. When every conversation gets strangely polite, every word softened, wrapped in apology and the hope of undoing what's already done. They were in that stage now. At 10:13 a.m., I refreshed my banking app. Incoming transaction pending. Amount, $2,400,000. I stared at the screen, not in disbelief, but in quiet acknowledgement. Years of work. Years of being overlooked. Years of hearing, tone it down. You're too technical. Let Jason present, he looks the part. Funny how quickly value becomes visible when the system holding everything together stops cooperating. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. It cleared. Please restore access. EO. Direct. Efficient. A man who finally understood urgency. I opened the admin console. The interface was simple. A secure verification screen, a log timeline, and the licensing toggle. One tiny switch. Off. On. Truth is, there'd been no dramatic shutdown earlier. No explosion. No sabotage. Just a locked door only I had the key to. I hovered over the toggle but paused. Not to hesitate, to think. This system was more than code. It was my proof. Proof that skill matters more than titles. Proof that being underestimated isn't a weakness. It's a weapon. I clicked. The switch flipped. Status changed. Unavailable active. Locked authorized. System mode restored. And like unclamping a blocked artery, everything surged back online. A second later my phone rang. Picked up. It's done, I said before he could speak. Relief hit the line like a physical sound. Thank you, he breathed out. Operations are already recovering. Warehouse dashboard is updating. Vendors are responding. Good. Then his tone shifted. Not transactional anymore, personal. Brenda, I need to say something. I waited. We failed you. Not just yesterday. Over the years. That wasn't the sentence I expected. You shouldn't have needed leverage to be respected. That sentence sat heavier. For the first time since this began, something beneath my calm shifted. Not pride exactly. Validation. Respect is earned, I finally said. But it shouldn't require a disaster to be visible. A quiet hum of agreement. Then, unexpectedly, would you consider contracting with us long-term? As a systems strategist. Advisory level. Your terms. I closed my eyes briefly. He still didn't understand. No, I said softly. I'm not returning to a place that only values me when it's burning. He exhaled, not irritated, just resigned. I had to ask. I know. He cleared his throat. There's one more thing. Jason wants to speak to you. I almost laughed. Of course. Before I could decline, another voice replaced his, tentative, stripped of ego. Brenda. Jason. He didn't sound angry. He sounded human. I'm not calling to argue. I wanted to say I was wrong. Not perfect. Not poetic. But real. I thought knowledge was replaceable. I thought people were interchangeable. That systems just ran because they existed. A beat passed. I didn't understand what I was walking into. And I didn't respect what you built. I'm sorry. There were a dozen sharp, satisfying things I could have said. Instead I chose the truth. Learn from it, I said. Silence stretched. Then he replied, I will. I ended the call. Not abruptly, not dramatically. Just with closure. Then I sat back and let the quiet settle. Not the silence of being dismissed. The silence of having been heard. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like I'd won something. It felt like I'd finally walked away from something I never needed to prove myself to in the first place. And somewhere deep inside, I knew this wasn't the ending. It was the beginning. 2 days after the system restored, an envelope arrived at my apartment. No courier, no signature. Just a thick cream-colored envelope slipped under my door. Company letterhead embossed at the top. Inside was a formal acknowledgement letter, something between an apology and a legal concession. It confirmed receipt of payment, transfer of IP, and full termination of all remaining ties. At the bottom were 3 signatures, the CEO, General Counsel, and shakily Jason. A printed copy wasn't required. It wasn't the kind of gesture corporate culture usually bothers with. But it meant something anyway. I placed it in the drawer beside the original contract and closed it gently. Not as a trophy. As a reminder. Because the lesson wasn't that I won. It was that I should never have had to fight for basic recognition in the first place. By the end of that week, my routine shifted. Not in big cinematic ways. Just quietly. I stopped checking my work email. I stopped waking up braced to solve problems no one else understood. I stopped carrying emergencies that weren't mine to carry. On Friday morning, I drove to the cafe near the river, the one I used to work from in the early days of building my system. Back then, I sat with headphones on, fueled by cheap coffee and the pressure of knowing failure wasn't an option. I chose a table by the window, the same one as before. Funny how full circle never feels the way you expect. It's never loud, never triumphant. It's just quiet. While I sipped my drink, my phone buzzed. A single text, short and professional. If you ever want to build something again, call me. No assumptions. No hierarchy. Just respect. Ew. I didn't reply. Not because the message wasn't meaningful, but because sometimes a message is only meant to be acknowledged, not answered. Later that afternoon, a notification appeared on my LinkedIn. Profile viewed. Jason, operations lead. I clicked his profile, not out of curiosity but to confirm something. His headline had changed. No more future leader in innovation. No buzzwords, no chest puffing. Instead, 5 simple words, learning the hard way. That made me exhale. Not in satisfaction but in something closer to relief. Because maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't be a cycle that repeated forever. 2 weeks passed in surprising peace. I slept more. I read novels instead of technical docs. I cooked dinner instead of eating whatever was nearest to my keyboard. But the world doesn't pause just because one chapter closes. One morning an email arrived. Not from the company but from a name I recognized, a competitor. Their message was direct. We heard what happened. We'd like to talk. Not about fixing someone else's mess. About building something new. Your terms. Your team. Your pace. At the bottom, a single sentence. We don't underestimate the architect. I stared at the screen. Not with excitement, not yet. With consideration. Because this time, I wasn't entering from a place of desperation or needing to prove myself. I was entering from choice. I typed a short reply. Let's talk next week. Then I hit send. That evening, I took a walk through the neighborhood. The air smelled like spring, even though winter still technically held the calendar. Kids rode scooters down the sidewalk. Someone grilled dinner nearby. A dog barked at nothing because that's what dogs do. Simple things. Things I used to rush past. When I reached the park, I sat on a bench and watched the water move. Steady, deliberate, unbothered by obstacles in its path. I realized then that what happened at that company wasn't a revenge story. Not really. From the outside it looked like one. Underestimated woman outsmarts arrogant leadership, gets paid, walks away victorious. But revenge means wanting them to suffer. I didn't. I wanted them to see the work, to see the structure, to see the hands behind the machine. And finally they had. As the sun lowered, I stood and headed home. No fanfare. No dramatic music. Just a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. At my door I paused. Not because I doubted the future, but because I finally recognized something. I never needed validation. I needed boundaries. Respect isn't given because someone demands it. Respect is the natural consequence of understanding your own value and refusing to let others define it for you. When I stepped inside, my phone buzzed again. This time from an unknown number. A single message. Thank you for not letting me stay the person who fired you. Jay. I didn't respond, but for the first time I smiled. Not the polite, calculated smile from the conference room. A real one. Because the lesson wasn't just mine. It was his too.